Local news, national news, even feel-good news. Delivering the topics that are relevant to you.
That's why I listen to Joe. He covers it all.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Honestly, I think we might have to call the bosses and see if we can get an extra hour. We're going to need a third hour today. We got a lot to cover here on a Friday night. It's the last day of the week. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're on your way home right now, drive safe and make sure you have an awesome weekend. I want to start off this hour talking about Donald Trump and a vision he has, a plan that he has that may be totally awesome or it may be absolutely terrible. And I'm going to get into the details of that plan coming up in a moment. But first, I was really impressed with Donald Trump when he learned on stage that Joe Biden fell at the Air Force Academy during graduation ceremonies yesterday. So he found out on stage, and I just love the humanity that he expressed. I mean, that's just kind of a rare thing from Donald Trump, and I would love to see more of this Donald Trump.
He's at the Air Force Academy. He actually fell down. Well, I hope he wasn't hurt. But the whole thing is crazy. You got to be careful about that. Because you don't want that. Even if you have to tiptoe down a ramp, you got to tiptoe.
And it was so great. Then he went on to tell the story about how the media and a bunch of other people made fun of him as how he walked down a ramp once after a speech. It was rainy and wet. The ramp was smooth. He had on dress shoes. And any of us that have ever been in a situation like that, man or woman or anything in between, you don't want to slip and fall in a scenario like that. And so Donald Trump was kind of self-deprecating, which I like that about him. I like this side of Donald Trump. I like this side of Donald Trump when he's being human and not just being a vicious, garbage disposal of anger and bitterness. It's not my thing, man. I'm just not so much into that. So here's what Donald Trump has pitched. Donald Trump says that if he's elected president again, that he is going to create a year-long celebration for America's 250th birthday, which is called the semiquincentennial. I practiced that a few times. The semiquincentennial. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, and it depends on how old you are. It depends on your age, as our listeners. But the United States had a thing back in 1976 that was called the bicentennial. That was the 200-year celebration of America. Laurel, I can see you shaking your head no. Like you have no idea that there was a bicentennial celebration.
It rings the bell. Like maybe my parents said something about it. But
Right.
What's going on?
That was well before Laurel's time. But Paul Cross, you and I are both sitting here shaking our head. Yes, like I remember the
absolutely
the bicentennial.
I remember painting they allowed us to paint the fire hydrants around in red, white, and blue, and it stayed that way for I think a month in the month of July because of the bicentennial. It was a big deal.
And I was in elementary school in 1976 during the bicentennial. But I remember it. I remember the festivities. I remember the excitement. I remember the fun about it. And now Donald Trump says that he is going to basically create the same thing. And before I break down some of the visions of what he wants to do for the semiquincentennial, I want to take everybody back to 1976. Okay, an ABC News report on the bicentennial, and it was in July. The 4th of July, as you might imagine, during the bicentennial year was magical. I mean, that was a big deal. And this is a report on the 4th of July during the bicentennial in 1976.
Happy birthday, Uncle Sam. ABC News goes to the Great American Birthday Party. From the American Broadcasting Company's Bicentennial Center in New York City, Harry Reasoner.
Good morning. We're here, and we'll be here throughout the day in this red, white, and blue studio to take a look at what the second oldest major continuing nation in the world is doing to celebrate the 200th anniversary of its independence. We're beginning to get some great pictures from down the harbor on Operation Sail, which is just beginning under the Verrazano Bridge.
A 17-gun salute here at the Presidio. The Navy band playing. 105 howitzers going off right now.
The sky's clear here, and President Ford is looking forward to what is obviously his most significant speech of this bicentennial weekend.
As I stand in the place where 2 centuries ago the United States of America,
that's President Ford,
conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
It was decided not to put all of America's July 4th eggs in one star-spangled basket for this celebration. Instead, local celebrations have been the order of the day. Americans are paying tribute to their national Sabbath in their own variety of ways. And
from the first glow on the Rockies, more than 80,000 Coloradoans looked back through cultural history. At the day-long games, the children rushed for gold-painted nuggets, remembering the first pioneers. The others along the crowded Midway enjoyed all-American hot dogs and Colorado's own Coors beer.
The celebration has been underway for about 8 hours, and almost 1 million people have gathered at the base of the Gateway Arch on the banks of the Mississippi for what's been a kaleidoscopic display of American music, culture, and fun. Almost at the beginning of the day, a barge carrying a brass jazz band left for New Orleans. They'll be playing the Mississippi River all the way along. And the Catherine Dunham Dance Troupe helped trace the origins of American music from the days of slavery to today's contemporary sounds. And even the youngsters of St. Louis got into the act, performing America's Children's Tale. I think you can see it in the faces here. The people, the million of them that have gathered in St. Louis for the bicentennial, have gotten more than they ever expected. This is Ron Miller at the Gateway Arch.
And here in Hershey this evening, most of the governors of those 50 states have gathered not only for their annual conference, but also to celebrate this very special 4th of July.
3 youngsters, descendants of John Morton of Pennsylvania and Arthur Middleton of South Carolina, who both signed the Declaration of Independence, tapped the Liberty Bell with their knuckles. As the tapping took place, the Centennial Bell above Independence Hall rang out 13 times, one for each of the original states. And if that wasn't enough, there was also a giant 5.5-hour parade through Philadelphia.
The view from up here, 110 stories above the ground, approaches the incomparable.
I'll say that's Ted Koppel, and he is standing on top of the World Trade Center, one of the Twin Towers. I'm not sure which it was, but 1976, of course, it still existed. But that's where when he says, I'm 110 stories up, that's where he's standing.
200 years young and a long, long way to go. Let's do this again in 100 years. I'm Harry Reisner. Happy birthday. Good night.
Na, 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 na. So that is it. That's from the bicentennial. And now that we're going to be 250 years old, President Trump, if he's reelected, he says on day one, I will convene a White House task force called Salute to America 250. It'll be responsible for coordinating with state and local governments to ensure not one day of celebration, but an entire year of festivities across the nation, starting on Memorial Day 2025 and continuing through July 4th, 2026. He says he'll work with all 50 governors in the U.S. to create the Great American State Fair, which will feature pavilions from all 50 states. He has expressed hope that Iowa will open the legendary Iowa State Fairgrounds for that. Other festivities Trump promises to include in the celebration include sporting contests for high school athletes, which Trump refers to as the Patriot Games. Oh, that was also a Tom Clancy novel, if I'm not mistaken, a movie with Harrison Ford. An executive order to construct the National Garden of American Heroes, which would create 100 statues honoring the greatest Americans of all time. Good luck narrowing that down to just 100 greatest Americans of all time. Trump closed out his comments by announcing that he would ask the nation's religious communities to pray for our country, noting that since the U.S.'s inception, the country has been sustained and straightened, his words, straightened by prayer. America's tourist industry should get ready because we're going to have a lot of people coming. It's going to be a record year. That from Donald Trump. So I want to know what you think. Do you want so? And I really want you to put it in light of this. So there is the mood in the United States is very glum. According to a new Gallup poll, only 18% of Americans are satisfied with the way things are going in the United States. So most of us are really down on the United States right now. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. I mean, these have been challenging years. I mean, even before the pandemic. I mean, we have been a terribly divided nation since the Iron Curtain fell. I mean, since we no longer have a common enemy, we have turned on one another. And we battle with one another. And I've mentioned several times, it just, sometimes you wake up in the morning, you think, gosh, is America circling the drain or what? So with us being down on America right now, do you think that this is going to be the time to get out and have a huge mega celebration? I got to tell you that if it was me, it's not, but if it was me making these shots, calling these decisions, I gotta say I like Donald Trump's plan. I mean, that would not be a reason in and of itself why I would vote for him. I mean, I would like to see some more policy issues and some better behavior out of him before I would vote for him again. And then, of course, if he's the GOP nominee, then he's gonna get my vote anyway. But I really like this plan, and honestly, I don't care who gets elected. I mean, I do. But with regards to the semiquincentennial, I don't care who gets elected. I hope they do this. I hope that we do celebrate America's 250th birthday. What about you? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app and let me know. And I remember when I was, I was in elementary school. I don't remember what grade. I'd have to do the math and walk it backwards and figure out what grade I was in 76. 76, hang on, 67, 70s. I was 9. So what grade was I in as a 9-year-old? What grade are 9-year-olds in? Does anybody know? Hey, Google, what grade are 9-year-olds in?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah, that helps. Google doesn't understand. So I was in the 9th grade, and I remember, like you said, Paul, we painted fire hydrants. I think we painted a mural at the school. I mean, there was all kinds of, we had parades at the school. We had parades in our small town community. I lived in a very small town, Kirkland, Washington at the time. Arushi, if you could bring up Paul for a second, please.
I remember 76 elementary school. We had a presentation for our parents where we learned how to make puppets, and it was called Puppet Tricks 76, and everybody was an historic figure from the past. There was your Benjamin Franklin and your George Washington and your Thomas Jefferson and your Abraham Lincoln. Everybody had a different puppet, and we did a play for our parents based on that, and that was all because of the bicentennial. And listening to your montage of stuff there, I'm exhausted just listening to all this stuff we did.
It sounded exciting, didn't it, though? I mean,
it was cool. It was a very uplifting, positive experience for everyone.
Every community had a celebration, and Arushi just told me that I asked my question oddly, that I phrased it weird. So let me ask the question right. So how old are you when you're? Wait, what was the question again? I don't even remember the question at this point.
You said, what grade are you if you're in the 9th grade? I think you meant to say.
How old are you if you're in the 9th grade? But no, I wouldn't have been in the 9th grade. I was 9 years old. So what
you would have been in 4th grade.
That was the question I meant to ask. What grade are 9-year-olds in?
Yeah.
4th grade. So I was a 4th grader then in 1976. So I'm impressed, Paul, that you remember the details as well as you do. I don't remember the details that well.
Joe, thanks to Facebook, I have a picture of our class with all of our puppets. And I should share that. I have that picture.
So, do you guys want to celebrate a semiquincentennial next year, or between Memorial Day 2025 and July 4th, 2026. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Hit me up right now. Let's talk about loving America and celebrating America. Do you think this is the right time, the right way? Do you like this plan? Let me know now on the Joe Kelley Show.
Trying to grab all the groceries in one trip? Oof, not how you would have done that. You know sometimes less is more. Like when you drive less and save with the USAA annual mileage discount. USAA. Get a quote today.
Now, the three big things you need to know.
3. There will be a Spider-Man 4, but the writer's strike has put everything on pause. Actor Tom Holland says meetings were happening, but they stopped in solidarity with the writers. Holland starred as Peter Parker in the 3 previous Spider-Man films. 2. Coffee shops in California won't be allowed to sell weed, but weed dispensaries are a step closer to selling coffee. The California State Assembly voted 64-9 in favor of allowing weed dispensaries to serve food and host areas where it's legal to consume the herb. State Representative Matt Haney is the author of the bill, which he says will boost business. 1. President Biden is set to formally sign the debt ceiling bill after it reaches his desk. Biden will also speak to the nation this evening about the bipartisan agreement passed by Congress this week. The package raises the debt limit and caps federal spending for the next 2 years.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk.
I was just telling a story in the chat that when I was a kid growing up in Texas, as we were talking about, back to 1976 and all. But when I was a kid growing up in Texas, I lived in Beaumont, Texas, and I honestly did not know until I left Texas that the air is not supposed to smell like petrochemical. The air just smells like petrochemical in Southeast Texas, and I thought that's what air smelled like. I remember I moved to Tuscaloosa, Alabama after I left Texas, and I'm like, what in the heck is that smell? And someone's like, I think it's pine trees. I'm like, really? That smells so good. All right, Donald Trump says if he's elected president, he is going to hold a semiquincentennial celebration. So what do you think? 844-580-WDBO. Terry is in Leesburg. Hi, Terry.
Hello. Boy, that's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I was 20 years old, and I definitely remember it. It was a blast. I mean, it was a big party, and we were all happy to be there. I remember my mother was thrilled. So I think if he were to do that, the United States would be fabulous. And imagine doing road trips to go all over the country to see all the different events happening.
But do you think, and I love your attitude, I love your energy, Terry, and I kind of feel the same way that you do. I think it would be a lot of fun. But do you think that America is in a position right now where we're in the mood to celebrate this nation?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
All right.
I think people are looking for happiness. They may not know where to find it, but I think that they would go out to the different events, and I think that they would find some joy in celebrating with other people. Yes. Time
will tell. Terry, thank you so much. Have a great Friday night. Have a great weekend. Thanks for your phone call. 844-580-WDBO or use the open mic in the WDBO app. Oops, no, hang on. There we go.
Joe, this celebration that President Trump is now proposing, I don't think we have much to celebrate. The only celebration that I see coming will be when Biden leaves office. And I think that's the only celebration that we should celebrate and get a Republican president in there, a conservative. Thanks a lot, Joe.
All right, let me know what you think. 844-580-WDBO or use the open mic in the WDBO app. Coming up as well, Ron DeSantis promises that the DeSantis campaign is going to engage in ballot harvesting, something that the Democrats have mastered, ballot harvesting. And DeSantis says, heck yes, we're going to ballot harvest. What is that, and what difference will it make? We'll break it all down for you coming up. Stay with us here on WDBO.
Weather brought to you by ProTech Air Conditioning and Plumbing Services. This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. In-depth segments on topics that matter to Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and all of Central Florida. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
I love your show every night. You're doing great, bud.
Hey, Joe. Yes, I remember that back then in 76, back in New York City. It was a big thing. I think it was almost like a month-long celebration. Every weekend it was closing down the highways and the fireworks going on, selling flags. And, I mean, it was a great time that New York was able to show their pride. I would love to have that again so my kids can share it.
Yeah. So our kids like Laurel can share in on something like that. So the younger generation can enjoy something like that. Let's go to Bob in Orlando at 844-580-WDBO. Hey, Bob, you're on WDBO.
Hey, Joe, how you doing? I think it's a great idea, but however, considering the lack of civics and American history being taught in school, I wonder if half the kids would even know who we're celebrating.
I think you're spot on about that. And honestly, I mentioned this poll that only 18% of Americans say they're satisfied with how things are going in the United States. I bet if you were to survey high schoolers and college kids, that number would be even lower. I think high schoolers and college kids are really disillusioned by the United States, certainly based upon a lot of the stuff I see online. So I think you're right about that, Bob.
And I think the only founders that they would be aware of are the ones on the $20 and the $10 bill.
You may well be right, Bob. Thank you so much. I'm glad you called. Thank you for listening. Another open mic.
I would love to see the celebration when Trump becomes president. But unfortunately, this is not a country anymore like we were back in the 70s. And I'm afraid it would just be an opportunity for those people who always want to cause trouble to say this one isn't getting enough recognition, that one isn't getting enough recognition. And I just think that it might end up being disastrous, unfortunately.
Now, let me share with you one of the many things that irritates Americans that we can't figure out and we get so frustrated with. This happened yesterday at the United States Capitol. The Rushing Brook Children's Choir was interrupted and stopped while singing the national anthem in Statuary Hall at the United States Capitol. The children had traveled to Washington, D.C. for a scheduled Capitol tour, and they got prior approval to sing a short set of patriotic songs inside Statuary Hall. And these little kids, are excellent singers. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go all the way through this, but I want to get to the end, and I'm going to have to explain to you what is happening. So the kids are singing, what is it called, the second chorus of the national anthem. It's the chorus that most people have never heard. Most people don't realize there is a second. In fact, I think there is a second, third, and fourth chorus of the national anthem. But they get down to the second chorus. And suddenly their chorus leader, the guy that does the thing with the hands, someone comes up and whispers something in his ear, and then he does the sign to the students to stop singing. Yeah, Laurel just did it in the video stream. So and then this. They got kicked out of the Capitol. The Capitol Police made them stop singing, and then they got kicked out of the Capitol under the guise that singing the national anthem at the nation's capital is considered a form of protest. And so since they were protesting inside the U.S. Capitol, it had to stop. Now, this is the kind of stuff that makes us not want to celebrate the United States of America. It's this kind of, God, I just grit my teeth with frustration. How people can do stuff like how are we so dumb that we shut down children with a permit that are singing the national anthem at the U.S. Capitol. Capitol Police say now there's an investigation. Well, that's not going to do the kids any good. It's not going to help them at all. Triple team traffic now. Paul Cross checks our Friday night drive home. Hello, PC.
Hey there, Joe. We do have a crash, 429 southbound before Sinclair Road, and it stays very, very heavy all the way to I-4 then, including onto the I-4 east and westbound ramps. More slowing I-4 westbound through Lake Mary and then into downtown from Parr to the 408. It is getting a little bit better right now as we get later into the afternoon. But again, by the Disney exits and through Champions Gate, especially eastbound on I-4, very, very busy this afternoon. This report sponsored by Indeed.com. Long days, longer to-do lists. Hire with Indeed. Their hiring platform lets you schedule and conduct virtual interviews all in one place. Learn more at Indeed.com/credit. From the WDBO Triple Team Traffic Center, I'm Paul Cross.
844-580-WDBO. Let's go to beautiful Mount Dora, where Jamie is joining us on the Joe Kelley Show. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, how you doing?
Great, thank you.
Good. I just wanted to comment on the party that Trump is talking about having. I just completed my 14th year of teaching, and for many of those years, I taught civics to 7th graders. It is a required subject here in the state of Florida. They actually have to pass an end-of-course exam. So I heard someone make a comment about how they didn't feel like, maybe most of our young people today would know about civics. And I think they may be selling them short, because I really feel like they would know and they would be very interested. I have 2 teenage daughters who are quite interested in it, and I think it's a great idea. I love it.
Do you agree with my belief, my assertion that in this poll that says that only 18% of Americans feel good about our country right now? I feel like teenagers and college students would have even a lower number than that.
Sadly, I do. I believe that's very true. I think there's a lot of confusion right now. I think we as adults and as politicians have not done a great job of showing our youth how to solve problems. I think there's been just a lot of the bipartisanship right now is terrible. And we really haven't done a good job of showing them how this country was founded and how we solve problems here. So I agree with you, yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you called, Jamie, and I hope you've not pulled your hair out after 14 years of being a school teacher.
I absolutely love what I do. It's a privilege to do it, and I listen to your show all the time. Thank you so much for what you do.
Can I ask you one more question about teaching?
Sure. Absolutely.
How much do you see and experience the statewide teacher shortage on a daily basis?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm actually out of the classroom now. I am in a specialist role at my school, and we have spent the day interviewing and hiring. So there's a huge shortage, and we were just discussing this afternoon how we are concerned because we don't want to drop the standards. We don't want the state of Florida to drop the standards for who we're putting in the classroom. However, we are in desperate need of teachers, and so we're really trying to, it's like a big puzzle right now. We're trying to figure out who to put in the classroom. Are they qualified? We've got some qualified teachers, though, who can't pass the test due to one reason or another. Maybe they speak another language. It's a tough situation right now. Teachers have been
my teenagers tell me that they have substitutes in more classes than they have teachers.
Very true, and substitutes are really tough to come by since COVID. A lot of people don't want to be in the classroom, and I will tell you the lack of discipline that we're seeing in the home. And
Jamie, I think you hit the nail right on the head with that one, because children misbehave today in ways that I don't think they ever have before in American schools.
I could curl your hair, Joe. Some of the stories.
Because sometimes my twin sons will come home from school and they'll tell me stories. And sometimes I take it with a grain of salt because I'm like, I don't know, maybe you're exaggerating a little bit. But their stories are so consistent and so routine about the behavior that is displayed by children at schools these days. It's terrible. It's embarrassing. If I was a teacher, honestly, I'd be afraid. I'd be scared at work.
I'm not afraid. I don't play. I have one rule, and that is respect. I respect you, and you respect me.
That's a good rule.
But it's a tough group there. But you know what? We're seeing such a lack of respect in the home, and I believe that as the home goes, so goes the school. So
I think you're right about that. She don't play. Yeah. Jamie and Mount Dora, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Let's go to Ajit, who's checking in from Orlando. Hello, Ajit. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
I want to share my story. I came in for 1976 from India.
Is that right? You moved here during the bicentennial?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wow.
I visited times. I came from India in June, and I remember that one. I will be standing in the Hudson River, looking all the ships passing through the Hudson River.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Wow, that had to have been. I'm just trying to imagine now as you're coming here, presumably for the first time from India. You must have thought that America's like that all the time, right?
Yeah, I do. And another thing is, when I was coming from India, I realized they are shipping, export so many bicentennial. This is the buckles for your belt.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. So I brought about 300 pieces from India, and I believe it. They are only allowed to take $14 when you come from India to USA. And what you going to do with $14? So I bring 300 bicentennial buckles, and I earned my first $3,000 in America.
Oh, wow. Look at you, man. I'm proud of you. Good for you. Well,
thank you very much. I'm listening to your shows, and you are excellent.
Thanks, Ajit. I appreciate that. And I know this is well overdue, but welcome to America. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ajit. Have a good night, buddy. It is 844-580-WDBO, 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic and the WDBO app. Coming up next, Governor DeSantis. I've got a couple of clips of audio I want you to hear from Governor DeSantis. And Laurel, we brought this up like weeks ago that Governor DeSantis pronounces his name two different ways. Governor DeSantis and Governor DeSantis. And someone on the campaign trail asked him how to pronounce his name. You'd think it'd be a simple answer. Evidently, it is not. You'll hear the complicated answer coming up next.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Your next chance to win the WDBO payroll payout of $1,000 happens Monday at 8 a.m. during Orlando's morning news. Just listen for the keyword and then tap the payroll payout button in the WDBO app.
$1,000. $1,000.
Get paid just for listening to WDBO.
This is awesome.
Man, there is something I don't get about our governor, Governor DeSantis, and that is I don't understand why he pronounces his last name two different ways. And I don't know why he won't just answer the question about how, because for us as journalists, as broadcasters, we need to know how to pronounce that guy's name. But at times he will say Ron DeSantis, and at other times he'll say Ron DeSantis. And he was asked about that on the campaign trail.
I've got a long last name, European name, Steinhauser. There's been some confusion over your last name and the pronunciation, and I'm just wondering, to correct the record, what is it?
Oh, this is ridiculous, these stupid things. Listen, the way to pronounce my last name, Winner.
Yeah, that is not helpful. Why would he leave that, what has got to be the easiest question he'll be asked during his presidential campaign? Why would he not answer that question? Why does he pronounce his last name two different ways? Who does that? I mean, seriously, who does that? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Could it be that he wants to make it more Latin for that demographic and make it?
Well, that's what some people theorize, because they actually, I've read a couple of articles on this, and they've talked to Italian experts, and they've asked Italians, how do you pronounce that name DeSantis? And honestly, people don't seem to agree on how to pronounce it that way either. And and honestly, we all have weird names. Well, not we all do. On my mind, Joe Kelley is pretty simple, but a lot of people have names that can be pronounced multiple different ways. And at some point, you just have to pick a way. Pick something and stick with it. And I don't know why. And people are making a big deal out of this, that DeSantis pronounces his name two different ways, and he could settle this deal. He could make this go away by just telling us, how do you pronounce your last name? What do you guys think? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. We'll continue with more of your calls and comments coming up next here on WDBO.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Triple Team Traffic.
Still monitoring here an object in the roadway, I-4 eastbound before the turnpike. It's partially blocking the left lane. Then we got a crash 429 southbound before Sinclair Road. It stays very heavy for you all the way to I-4. A crash in Winter Park on Lakemont Avenue. This is between Pine and Palmer. And then Phelps Avenue as well. Very, very busy in that area because of a collision. Having tech issues? No worries. Visit Refresh Computers, Central Florida's budget computer store. Visit Refresh Computers in Longwood or at refreshcomputers.net. From the WDBO Triple Team Traffic Center, I'm Paul Cross.
Weather brought to you by ProTech Air Conditioning and Plumbing Services. This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. News, weather, traffic, all the things you want on your drive home. Plus, Joe Kelley being, well, Joe Kelley. Now, the Joe Kelley Show on Orlando's news and talk, WDBO.
So Ron DeSantis was asked by a voter Wednesday in Iowa if he plans to use ballot harvesting to win the presidency in 2024. And DeSantis replied, yes, we will. We will. He said each state is different. In Nevada, they send everybody a ballot, which is bad. But we are going to do ballot harvesting. I'm doing it, yes. I'm not going to fight with one hand tied behind my back. So that Ron DeSantis is all in on ballot harvesting. Now, in less than 60 seconds, let's explain ballot harvesting.
What is ballot harvesting? Ballot harvesting is an inflammatory term for ballot collection, or simply the return of absentee ballots. Some form of ballot collection is legal in more than 30 states. When creating ballot collection laws, states strive to balance convenience with voter security. In many states, only family members and caregivers may return a ballot for another person, while other states allow voters to ask anyone to return their ballot. As an added voter protection measure, some states require the person returning the ballot to show a photo ID or sign a statement. States may also limit the number of ballots one person can return and prohibit ballot collectors from receiving compensation.
So there you go. That's ballot harvesting. Now, let me tell you the ways that ballot harvesting goes wrong, or the ways that ballot harvesting can be abused. And the Democrats have been ballot harvesting for years now, and they have done it well. And quite frankly, during the last presidential election that I know a lot of you think that Donald Trump won, Donald Trump employed different tactics when it came to campaigning. And Ron DeSantis says, I'm not going to do this with one hand tied behind my back. Well, Donald Trump did. Donald Trump, blasted the idea of ballot harvesting. He blasted the idea of drop boxes. He blasted the idea of early voting. And he wanted everybody to vote on election day. And that's fine. I get the integrity behind that, but he lost. He lost the election. And we, Republicans, are going to continue to lose elections unless and until we start ballot harvesting like they do. But the problem is the abuse of ballot harvesting. What will happen is a ballot harvester, a procurer of ballots, will go, say, to a retirement community where, 200 residents, 200 voters live, and a ballot harvester, Democrat, will take with him or her the 200 plus ballots and hand them all out and oftentimes lean in on them to vote the way that they want them to vote. And then the ballot harvester, quite frankly, if they collect 200 ballots at a senior facility, if they look through the ballots, if they're not sealed right, if they look through them and see that people have voted the way that they didn't want them to vote, they can either toss the ballot out, alter the ballot. A lot of times, but these ballot harvesters will literally end up with hundreds and hundreds of blank ballots, and they'll simply sit down and fill them all out and turn them all in. Now, that is very problematic. It's corrupt. But DeSantis says he's going to start doing it. Honestly, if you don't start doing it, if Republicans don't start doing it, you're not going to win elections, because the Democrats have perfected ballot harvesting. So I think that Ron DeSantis is on the money on this one, that they've got to engage in ballot harvesting, while at the same time they need to police ballot harvesting to make sure that people aren't cheating with their ballot harvesting. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. What do you think about DeSantis now getting behind ballot harvesting? DeSantis also shutting down a heckler at one of his campaign events.
Fortunately, there's bad stuff that's getting into the schools. There's pornography that's getting into the schools. So the parents have had to blow the whistle in Florida. They've had to, yeah, well, thank you. Yeah. We're not going to let you impose an agenda on our kids. We're going to stand up for our kids. We're going to make sure to do it right. That's what we're going to do. Yeah. Those people like that in Florida are the people we beat every single day on policy. We do not let them win. We win all these battles. We're not letting them indoctrinate our kids. Not on our watch.
So the woman called DeSantis an effing fascist, and that was how Ron DeSantis responded to that. If you're just joining us, we're talking about ballot harvesting. We're also talking about Donald Trump's plan, if he gets elected, to engage in a semiquincentennial. That is a celebration of our 250th anniversary as a nation, that in 2026. We're also talking about a children's choir that was kicked out of the Capitol building after singing the national anthem, even though they had permission to do so and traveled to D.C. expressly to do so.
Joe, you brought up about the students singing and getting literally kicked out of the White House. I have not heard that. I've not seen it. I've not read about it. So I hadn't heard anything about it. That's ludicrous. What have they done to apologize? And I just think that in one way, this probably will affect these children the rest of their life. And what a bad precedent to set for them.
You know, yeah, these children will, for the rest of their lives, remember this. I don't know if they're going to need psychological counseling or anything like that. I don't know if they're going to need mental help. I'm not sure it was that egregious of an event. But they will most certainly forever remember their trip to Washington, D.C. and being shut down by the man, being shut down by the Capitol Police. There is absolutely no doubt about that. They most certainly will. Open mic here about Donald Trump's plan for a 250th anniversary party in the United States if he is elected.
Every single day in America should be celebrated. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, and this is the greatest country on earth. And if Donald Trump is back in the White House, I would say that's a super duper reason to be celebrating, because that would mean that the grifters and the Weather Underground wouldn't be running our country anymore. God bless America.
See, but here's the thing. If Donald Trump is elected, I mean, half of the country is going to want to celebrate. If Donald Trump is not elected, half of the country is going to want to celebrate. You know what I'm saying? I don't know that there is a unifier that is going to make the whole country happy again. We've just been miserable for so long.
I would love to see the celebration when Trump becomes president, but unfortunately, this is not a country anymore like we were back in the 70s, and I'm afraid it would just be an opportunity for those people who always want to cause trouble to say this one isn't getting enough recognition, that one isn't getting enough recognition, and I just think that it might end up being disastrous, unfortunately.
Let's just a quick mention here about this being Pride Month. NASCAR is now getting grief because NASCAR made a social media post about Pride Month, and their NASCAR logo was in Pride colors. And then the National Weather Service celebrates Pride as a storm is in the Gulf of Mexico right now. The taxpayer-funded government agency posted a rainbow flag Thursday, the first day of hurricane season and the start of Pride Month. And in their post, the National Weather Service writes, Pride Month is an opportunity to celebrate each other with mutual love and respect. The diversity of the National Weather Service family, including those in the LGBTQ plus community, bring the vital skills and perspectives that allow us to meet our mission of protecting a diverse nation. Signed, the National Weather Service. And as you might imagine, they have been greeted with both scorn and praise, more scorn than praise. With one person writing in response, this is certainly not weather-related. Just stick to your job. You dilute your product and its value by pushing this political nonsense. So that's the old, shut up and dribble adage. Shut up and dribble. Just do your job. Forecast the weather. We don't need you to do anything else about that. For anybody who fears robots and AI, like we all do. So some researchers at Stanford University have developed an ultra-realistic self-healing material that resembles human skin. Robots could soon be cloaked in human-like synthetic skin similar to the cyborg assassin of the Terminator movie franchise. Oh, that's great. And we were discussing in the chat room a little while ago that, and that's on our Facebook page, that there was an Air Force demonstration, or there was an Air Force leader who told this story at a military convention of some sort. But he said that they did a simulation with a drone, and the drone ended up killing the human operator to avoid the commands. Now, this was all a simulation. It wasn't in real life. It was a simulation. And after the drone killed the human operator during the simulation, they gave new commands to the drone saying, you can't do that. You can't kill the human operator. So the next time this happened, the drone, instead of killing the human operator, shot down the communications tower that the human operator used to communicate with the drone. Again, didn't really happen. It was a simulation. But now the Air Force has completely walked back the entire thing. The Air Force put this out there saying this happened, and now they've walked back the whole thing saying we've never run that experiment, nor would we need to, in order to realize that this is a plausible outcome. What? That we know that this is a plausible outcome? That the machines are going to rise up and kill the humans? Seriously, I've seen the movie, so have you. We all know how it ends. It ends badly for humans. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, the three big things you need to know.
3.
Former Motley Crue guitarist Mick Mars is suing his bandmates, claiming he was wrongfully dismissed from the group. The 72-year-old Mars suffers from chronic arthritis that has fused his spine, making it impossible for him to turn his head. Mars is a 25% shareholder in the band's enterprises. Two. America's credit rating may still take a hit despite Congress avoiding a U.S. default. Credit rating agency Fitch Ratings said today it will keep the nation's AAA rating on its negative watch list and plans to make a decision on a potential downgrade by the end of September. A credit rating downgrade would raise the government's borrowing costs. One. President Biden will address the American people from the Oval Office this evening. He'll speak about the recently passed debt ceiling bill. Biden is expected to sign the bill this weekend and avoid a default before next week.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Your next chance to win the WDBO payroll payout of $1,000 happens Monday at 8 a.m. during Orlando's morning news. Just listen for the keyword and then tap the payroll payout button in the WDBO app.
$1,000. $1,000.
Get paid just for listening to WDBO.
This is awesome.
You know, something that really surprises me, this is going to be dark Joe Kelley. Can I be dark Joe Kelley for a few minutes? Something that really surprises me is I'm always surprised that more of us aren't missing body parts. Like, you know, us humans, I mean, flesh is weak, and we're constantly working around steel and concrete and stuff like that. And I'm always surprised that there aren't more people that are missing fingers or missing toes or things like that. I had a friend of mine who was a state trooper, and he was missing one of his ring fingers. And I never know if it's okay to ask someone, like, is it wrong to ask, hey, what happened to your finger? Well, where is your arm? Because I have a neighbor who is missing his arm at the elbow, and every time I see him, I'm like, gosh, I really want to know how that happened. And am I allowed to ask people how that happened? So I bring this up because something bad happened with a 6-year-old girl and in a pickup truck. The first read through of the story, I thought the girl was sitting in the back of the pickup truck. As I reread the story, I realized she was sitting in the cab of the pickup truck. They just didn't do a very good job of specifying that. But a 6-year-old girl in Virginia is riding in a pickup truck with her, I don't know, her family, someone. And while she is sitting in the front seat of the pickup truck, she's playing with the ratchet strap that's used to secure cargo. You guys know what those are, right? They kind of look like seat belts. They're often yellow, a little bit narrower than seat belts, but it's like the same material. And she's playing with this ratchet strap, and evidently the ratchet strap flew out the window of the truck, and it got wrapped around the drive shaft of the truck. And the tension on the ratchet strap grew so strong that it instantly, traumatically severed both of her feet from the rest of her body. Instantly, a 6-year-old losing both feet. Now, you'll be glad to know, I don't want to say there's a happy ending. It's sad either way, but she had both feet reattached, and they seem to be doing well. In fact, her mother on social media writes, her little toes look so good. So it's great news, but don't you always wonder when you see someone or is it just me? Laurel, is it just me, or do you ever wonder why someone's missing a limb?
No, I always do. Yeah. I'm like, were you born that way, or is there a story?
Oh, there is a hilarious John Mulaney routine about that, where John Mulaney, he's a stand-up comic, but he tells the story that they went to this camp one summer, and his dad had warned him and his brother that they just found out that the guy that runs the camp only has one arm, and whatever, and he and his brother, they were little kids, but they got all excited, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to find out how he lost his arm. And the dad goes, that is exactly why I'm telling you 3 weeks before vacation starts, so that you don't ask questions like that. And sure enough, and they get to camp, and then little John Mulaney ends up asking the guy, hey, how did you lose your arm? And the guy goes, actually, I was born that way. And Mulaney's reaction is, meh. That was not an exciting story at all. So there you go. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. If you have ever been a fan of Wile E, Coyote, and the Roadrunner, you are going to love what I've got for you coming up next. Stay right there.
Weather brought to you by ProTech Air Conditioning and Plumbing Services. This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. Connected to our community. Talk local issues and events with Joe Kelley. Use the open mic in the WDBO app and let Joe know what interests you. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Well, it's Friday nights and unwind a little bit. We can loosen up our neckties. Not that any of us wear a necktie. Did you guys ever watch Wile E, Coyote and the Roadrunner cartoons when you were a kid? Roadrunner. That's what it says. Coyote. So I found this really cool list of rules, 9 rules that animator Chuck Jones, and Chuck Jones was the guy who invented Wile E, Coyote and the Roadrunner, and Chuck Jones, as the animator, made up a list of rules for Wile E, Coyote and the Roadrunner for future or for other animators. These rules apply. So do you guys want to hear the rules? You want to try to guess any of the rules here for Wile E, Coyote and the Roadrunner? All right, rule number 1, the Roadrunner cannot harm the coyote except by going beep, beep. That's it. Rule number 2, no outside force can harm the coyote, only his own ineptitude or the failure of the Acme products. Rule number 3, the coyote could stop anytime if he were not a fanatic. I love that. Why does that even need to be in the rules, that the coyote could stop at any time, but he's a fanatic? Rule number 4, no dialogue ever, except beep, beep. Rule number 5, the Roadrunner must stay on the road. Otherwise, logically, he would not be called a Roadrunner. I feel like, and Laurel, we were talking about this, I feel like we've seen the Roadrunner running on things other than roads.
At least like the desert, the sand, right?
Yeah.
Past a bluff or something.
Right. Now I feel like I've got to go back and watch the anthology of the Roadrunner and Wile E, Coyote just to see if all these rules have been applied to. Speaking about going out in the desert, rule number 6. Rule number 6, all action must be confined to the natural environment of the 2 characters, which is the Southwest American desert. That's why we never saw the Wile E, Coyote and the Roadrunner, say, in New York City or Chicago or San Francisco or anything like that. They're always in the Southwest American desert. Rule number 7, all materials, tools, weapons, or mechanical conveniences must be obtained from, anyone? Must be obtained from
Acme.
The Acme Corporation, of course. Rule number 8, whenever possible, make gravity the coyote's greatest enemy. Oh my gosh, how many times have we seen the coyote either fall off of something or something fall onto him? And lastly, rule number 9, the coyote is always more humiliated than harmed by his failures. I don't know, man. When he gets completely crushed by a giant boulder, I feel like that would really, really hurt. But the coyote seems to always survive and seems to crawl out there. So beep, beep. That's all you're going to get from the Wile E, Coyote. Walgreens has debuted a new anti-theft store with just 2 aisles where customers can shop for themselves. This is in Chicago. And I think about this every time I walk into a store here in the Orlando area. And I think, wow, we don't have that widespread looting that they have in cities like Los Angeles, like San Francisco, like Chicago, like New York. And I'm glad we don't have that here. And I fear that one day we're going to have it here. But now, and this kind of piggybacks on a conversation we had last night about immigrant labor and how companies will always find a way to be able to continue to stay in business and make money. And Walgreens decided instead of shutting down their Chicago store, let's redesign the Chicago store. So this is the store of the future, one might suggest. And let me describe it to you. So it has only 2 aisles. Only 2 aisles where customers can shop for themselves. The rest must be done via a kiosk. The new anti-theft store in downtown Chicago will trust shoppers to pick up essentials for themselves in 2 free aisles, but everything else must be ordered and picked up via the counter or at the counter, the checkout counter. Which reminds me a little bit of oh my gosh, there used to be an old department store like that where you would see things on the showroom floor and then you'd say, I want one of those, but you couldn't take the one on the showroom floor. You had to go and service merchandise. Was that what it was called? Because they used to use that on like the Wheel of Fortune. They would say, oh, and we'll take the rest on the service merchandise gift certificate or gift card. But that's what it's come to because of the rampant theft. It is terrible how people are just getting in and stealing, looting, thanks to a lot of these George Soros-funded district attorneys that are going soft on crime. It's absolutely terrible, and I feel for these businesses that aren't able to operate without fear of looting, of people coming in. 3 Amazon delivery drivers have filed a class action lawsuit in Colorado claiming inhumane working conditions in which they're forced to urinate in bottles and defecate in dog waste bags to ensure that they're not disciplined for missing their delivery goals. Now, Amazon, for their part, says no. In fact, Amazon News, which is the official account for Amazon, tweeted, "You don't really believe the peeing in the bottles thing, do you?" Well, that's interesting. What a way to counter the lawsuit and the claims. The lawsuit states that supervisors instruct delivery drivers to remove the pee bottles from delivery vehicles and for drivers to urinate or defecate outside the range of surveillance cameras that Amazon uses in the vehicles. Trash cans at Amazon fulfillment centers are frequently overflowing with bottles of urine that drivers throw away at the end of their shifts. Does this happen? Is this real? Certainly someone listening right now is an Amazon driver or was an Amazon driver. Is this really happening? I've heard reports of this happening for a long time now. This is the first I've seen of someone suing over it. But if you're an Amazon driver or you know an Amazon driver or you used to be an Amazon driver, hit me up at 844-580-WDBO, 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. I would love to get your take on whether or not this actually does happen. Coming up here in the week ahead, Scott Peterson goes on trial. Scott Peterson was the school resource officer at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School down in Parkland during the mass shooting there. And this really is going to be a prosecution first in the nation. That a former sheriff's deputy is about to be tried on charges that he failed to confront a gunman who murdered 14 students and 3 staff members 5 years ago down in Parkland. This is going to be a trial next week. Hey, let me get Tyrone here real quick. Tyrone, you can leave the music up. It's okay, Arushi. Tyrone, you're on WDBO. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Good. And you're an Amazon worker?
Yes, sir.
So do you pee in bottles?
Well, sometimes I have to stop at like a 7-Eleven or something, but they if you stop at a 7-Eleven, they'll dock your pay for like...
Wow.
Take a stop at like another place that you like at a stoplight, shit like that, man. Oh, sorry, I can't say it on the live.
All right, Tyrone, thank you for calling. We will continue coming up next.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk.
I still find this really, really weird that Governor DeSantis won't give a straight answer on how to pronounce his last name. I mean, this should be the easiest question imaginable.
Got a long last name, European.
And by the way, it's the reporter is trying to empathize with DeSantis, but the reporter saying that I, too, have a difficult name to pronounce.
Got a long last name, European name, Steinhauser. There's been some confusion over your last name and the pronunciation, and I'm just wondering, to correct the record, what is it?
Oh, this is ridiculous, these stupid things. Listen, the way to pronounce my last name, Winner.
Okay, first of all, I think the reporter said pronunciation, and that's not the proper pronunciation of that word, if I'm not mistaken, right? He says pronunciation, and how ironic. And look, Governor DeSantis, you're the one who's causing confusion on this. You're the one who says your name two different ways. You sometimes say DeSantis and sometimes say DeSantis. So you need to make up your mind as to what your last name is and how to pronounce it.
Hey, Joe. I have a Spanish last name. It is pronounced Saravia in Spanish. But if I'm speaking to my non-Spanish friends that don't speak Spanish, I pronounce it Saravia. So I guess you guys are right. It depends on who you're talking to, who you're speaking to.
I don't know. Is that applicable, though, for DeSantis? I mean, does DeSantis pronounce his name differently one way or the other based upon whether or not he's with a certain audience? I don't know that that's the case. I will tell you that when I was in high school, my high school sweetheart, her last name was Straface, Straface, Straface. And years later, decades later, she went to medical school and became a doctor, and we're still friends to this day. And I remember once calling her at her medical clinic, and the medical clinic answered the phone, something like, Dr. Strafacci's office. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Strafacci? And that is the Italian version of her name. And she is of Italian heritage. And at some point in her life, she changed the pronunciation of her name from Straface to Strafacci. And, sometimes people do that. I used to go by J a long time ago, but it was it's my initials, JJ. So I used to go by JJ as a kid. And now I use my real name, Joseph James. So that's it. Listen, I hope you guys have a great weekend. Be safe this weekend. Thanks, everybody in the chat room for joining us. We sure do appreciate it. Coming up next, it is the third hour of the Sean Hannity Show. We'll see you back here Monday night.